Uh,
Good evening, everybody. Today your reader is Drishti. So this time round we have three readers who will take turns. And you met Shilpi yesterday. It would be Drishti today. And what I would like to say is, I would suggest you keep a pen and paper ready or book ready so that you make a note of um, whatever struck you. And another thing I would suggest is um, so this is a very old teacher's trick and a learner's trick is there'll be words, especially in this book, which are very fancy. So whichever word takes your fancy, please write it down. It'll help you in building up your vocabulary, also help you in um, by building, you're choosing the word, you're creating a connection to the word. It's as simple as that. So, Drishti, please start.
yeah. If I'm not wrong, yesterday Shilpi left off at Benjamin Franklin and that paragraph. So I'll start reading from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin, tactless in his youth, became so diplomatic, so adroit at handling people, that he was made American ambassador to France. The secret of his success? I will speak ill of no man, he said, and speak all the good I know of everybody. Any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do. But it takes character and self control to be understanding and forgiving. A great man shows his greatness, said Carlyle, by the way he treats little men. Bob Hoover, a famous test pilot and frequent performer at air shows, was returning to his home in Los Angeles from an air show in San Diego. As described in the magazine Flight Operations, at 300 feet in the air, both engines suddenly stopped. By deft maneuvering, he managed to land the plane, but it was so badly damaged, although nobody was hurt. Hoover's first act after the emergency landing was to inspect the airline's fuel. Just as he suspected, the World War II propeller plane he had been flying had been fueled with jet fuel rather than gasoline. Upon returning to the airport, he asked to see the mechanic who had serviced his airplane. The young man was sick with the agony of his mistake. Tears streamed down his face as Hoover approached. He had just caused the loss of a very expensive plane and could have caused the loss of 3 lives as well. You can imagine Hoover's anger. One could anticipate the tongue lashing that this proud and precise pilot would unleash for that carelessness. But Hoover didn't scold the mechanic. He didn't even criticize him. Instead, he put his big arm around the man's shoulder and said, "To show you, I'm sure, that you'll never do this again, I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow." Often parents are tempted to criticize their children. You would expect me to say, "Don't." But I will not. I am merely going to say, before you criticize them, read one of the classics of American journalism, Father Forgets. It originally appeared as an editorial in the People's Home Journal. We are reprinting it here with the author's permission as condensed in the Reader's Digest. Father Forgets is one of those little pieces which, dashed off in a moment of sincere feeling, strikes an echoing chord in so many readers as to become a perennial reprint favorite. Since its first appearance, Father Forgets has been reproduced, writes the author, W. Livingston Larned, in hundreds of magazines and house organs, and in newspapers the country over. It has been reprinted almost as extensively in many foreign languages. I have given personal permission to thousands who wished to read it from school, church, and lecture platforms. It has been on the air on countless occasions and programs. Oddly enough, college periodicals have used it, and high school magazines. Sometimes a little piece seems mysteriously to click. This one certainly did. Father Forgets. Listen, son, I am saying this as you lie asleep. One little paw crumpled under your cheek, and the blonde curls stickily wet on your damp forehead. I have stolen into your room alone. Just a few minutes ago, as I sat reading my paper in the library, a stifling wave of remorse swept over me. Guilty, I came to your bedside. There are things I was thinking, son. I had been cross to you. I scolded you as you were dressing for school because you gave your face merely a dab with a towel. I took you to task for not cleaning your shoes. I called out angrily when you threw some of your things on the floor. At breakfast, I found fault too. You spilled things. You gulped down your food. You put your elbows on the table. You spread butter too thick on your bread. And as you started off to play and I made for my train, you turned and waved a little hand and called, "Goodbye, Daddy." And I frowned and said in reply, "Hold your shoulders back." Then it began all over again in the late afternoon. As I came up the road, I spied you, down on your knees, playing marbles. There were holes in your stockings. I humiliated you before your boyfriends by marching you ahead of me to the house. Stockings were expensive, and if you had to buy them, you would be more careful. Imagine that, son, from a father. Do you remember later, when I was reading in the library, how you came in timidly with a sort of hurt look in your eyes? When I glanced up over my paper, impatient at the interruption, you hesitated at the door. "What is it you want?" I snapped. You said nothing, but ran across in one tempestuous plunge and threw your arms around my neck and kissed me. And your small arms tightened with an affection that God had set blooming in your heart and which even neglect could not wither. And then you were gone, pattering up the stairs. Well, son, it was shortly afterwards that my paper slipped from my hands and a terrible, sickening fear came over me. What has habit been doing to me? The habit of finding fault, of reprimanding. This was my reward to you for being a boy. It was not that I did not love you, it was that I expected too much of youth. I was measuring you by the yardstick of my own years. And there was so much that was good and fine and true in your character. The little heart of you was as big as the dawn itself over the wide hills. This was shown by a spontaneous impulse to rush in and kiss me good night. Nothing else matters tonight, son. I've come to your bedside in darkness, and I've knelt there, ashamed. It is a feeble atonement. I know you would not understand these things if I told them to you during your waking hours. But tomorrow, I will be a real daddy. I will chum with you and suffer when you suffer and laugh when you laugh. I will bite my tongue when impatient words come. I will keep saying, as if it were a ritual, "He's nothing but a boy, a little boy." I am afraid I have visualized you as a man. Yet as I see you now, son, crumpled and weary in your cot, I see that you are still a baby. Yesterday you were in your mother's arms, your head on her shoulder. I have asked too much. Too much. Instead of condemning people, let's try to understand them. Let's try to figure out why they do what they do. That's a lot more profitable and intriguing than criticism, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. To know all is to forgive all. I'm sorry. As Dr. Johnson said, God Himself, sir, does not propose to judge man until the end of his days. Why should you and I? Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Number 2. The big secret of dealing with people. There is only one way under high heaven to get anybody to do anything. Did you ever stop to think of that? Yes, just one way, and that is by making the other person want to do it. Remember, there is no other way. Of course, you can make someone want to give you his watch by sticking a revolver in his ribs. You can, I'm sorry, you can make your employees give you cooperation until your back is turned by threatening to fire them. You can make a child do what you want it to do by a whip or a threat. But these crude methods have sharply undesirable repercussions. The only way I can get you to do anything is by giving you what you want. What do you want? Sigmund Freud said that everything you do and I do springs from two motives: the sex urge and the desire to be great. John Dewey, one of America's most profound philosophers, phrased it a bit differently. Dr. Dewey said that the deepest urge in human nature is the desire to be important. Remember the phrase, the desire to be important. It is significant. You are going to hear that a lot about it in this book. I'm sorry. What do you want? Not many things, but the few that you wish, you crave with an instance that will not be denied. Some of the things most people want to include: health and preservation of life, food, sleep, money, and the things money will buy. Life is the hereafter. Life in the hereafter, sorry. Sexual gratification, the well being of our children, the feeling of importance. Almost all these wants are usually gratified, all except one. But there is one longing, almost as deep, almost as imperious as the desire for food or sleep, which is seldom gratified. It is what Freud calls the desire to be great. It is what Dewey calls the desire to be important. Lincoln, Lincoln once began a letter saying everybody likes a compliment. William James said, the deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated. He didn't speak, mind you, of the wish or the desire or the longing to be appreciated. He said the craving to be appreciated. Here is a gnawing and unfaltering human hunger. And the rare individual who honestly satisfies this heart hunger will hold people in the palm of his or her hand. Even the undertaker will be sorry when he dies. The desire for a feeling of importance is one of the chief distinguishing differences between mankind and the animals. To illustrate, when I was a farm boy out in Missouri, my father bred fine rock Jersey hogs and pedigreed white faced cattle. We used to exhibit our hogs and white faced cattle at the country fairs and livestock shows throughout the Middle West. We won first prizes by the score. My father pinned his blue ribbons on a sheet of white muslin, and when friends or visitors came to the house, he would get out the long sheet of muslin. He would hold one end, and I would hold the other while he exhibited the blue ribbons. The hogs didn't care about the ribbons they had won, but father did. These prizes gave him a feeling of importance. I'm sorry. If our ancestors hadn't had this flaming urge for a feeling of importance, civilization would have been impossible. Without it, we should have been just about like animals. It was this desire for a feeling of importance that led an uneducated, poverty stricken grocery clerk to study some law books, and he found in the bottom of a barrel of a household plunder that he had bought for 50 cents. You have probably heard of this grocery clerk. His name was Lincoln. It was this desire for a feeling of importance that inspired Dickens to write his immortal novels. This desire that inspired Sir Christopher Wren to design his symphonies in stone. This desire that made Rockefeller amass millions that he never spent. And the same desire made the richest family in your town build a house far too large for its requirements. This desire makes you what you want, makes you want to wear the latest styles, drive the latest cars, and talk about your brilliant children. It is this desire that lures many boys and girls into joining gangs and engaging in criminal activities. The average young criminal, according to E.P. Mulrooney, one time police commissioner of New York, is filled with ego, and his first request after arrest is for those lurid newspapers that make him out a hero. The disagreeable prospect of serving time seemed remote so long as he can gloat over his likeness, sharing space with pictures of sports figures, movies, and TV stars and politicians. If you tell me how you get your feeling of importance, I'll tell you what you are. That determines your character. That is the most significant thing about you. For example, John D. Rockefeller got his feeling of importance by giving money to erect a modern hospital in Peking, China, to care for millions of poor people whom he had never seen and never would see. Dillinger, on the other hand, got his feeling of importance by being a bandit, a bank robber, and a killer. When the FBI agents were hunting him, he dashed into a farmhouse up in Minnesota and said, "I'm Dillinger." He was proud of the fact that he was public enemy number one. "I'm not gonna hurt you, but I'm Dillinger," he said. Yes, the one significant difference between Dillinger and Rockefeller is how they got their feeling of importance. History sparkles with the amusing examples of famous people struggling for a feeling of importance. Even George Washington wanted to be called His Mightiness, the President of the United States, and Columbus pleaded for the title Admiral of the Ocean and Viceroy of India. Catherine the Great refused to open letters that were not addressed to Her Imperial Majesty, and Mrs. Lincoln in the White House turned upon Mrs. Grant like a tigress and shouted, "How dare you be seated in my presence until I invite you?" Millionaires, helped finance Admiral Byron's expedition to the Antarctic in 1928 with the understanding that ranges of icy mountains would be named after them. And Victor Hugo aspired to have nothing less than the city of Paris renamed in his honor. Even Shakespeare, the mightiest of the mighty, tried to add luster to his name by procuring a coat of arms for his family. People sometimes became invalids in order to win sympathy and attention and get a feeling of importance. For example, take Mrs. McKinley. She got a feeling of importance by forcing her husband, the President of the United States, to neglect important affairs of the state while he reclined on the bed beside her for hours at a time, his arm about her, soothing her to sleep. She fed her gnawing desire for attention by insisting that he remain with her while she was having her teeth fixed, and once created a stormy scene when he had to leave her alone with the dentist while he kept an appointment with John Hay, his Secretary of State. The writer Mary Roberts Reinhardt once told me about a bright, vigorous young woman who had become an invalid in order to get a feeling of importance. One day, said Mrs. Reinhardt, this woman had been obliged to face something. Her age, perhaps. The lonely years were stretching ahead, and there was little left for her to anticipate. She took to her bed, and for 10 years her old mother traveled to the third floor and back, carrying trays, nursing her. Then one day the old mother, weary with service, lay down and died. For some weeks the invalid languished. Then she got up, put on her clothing, and resumed living again. Some authorities declare that people may actually go insane in order to find, in the dreamland of insanity, the feeling of importance that has been denied them in the harsh world of reality. There are more patients suffering from the mental diseases in the United States than from all other diseases combined. Sorry. What is the cause of insanity? Nobody can answer such a sweeping question, but we know that certain diseases, such as syphilis, break down and destroy the brain cells and result in insanity. In fact, about one half of all mental diseases can be attributed to such physical causes and as lesions, alcohol, toxins, and injuries. But the other half, and this is the appalling part of the story, the other half of the people who go insane apparently have nothing organically wrong with their brain cells. In post mortem examinations, when their brain tissues are studied under the highest powered microscopes, the tissues are found to be apparently just as healthy as yours and mine. Why do these people go insane? I put that question to the head physician of one of our most important uh, psychiatric hospitals. This doctor, who has received the highest honors and the most coveted awards for his knowledge of the subject, told me, frankly, that he did not know why people went insane. Nobody knows for sure, but he did say that many people who go insane find in insanity a feeling of importance that they were unable to achieve in the world of reality. He told me the story. I have a patient right now whose marriage proved to be a tragedy. She wanted love, sexual gratification, children, and social prestige. But life blasted all her hopes. Her husband didn't love her, he refused to even eat with her, and forced her to serve his meals in his room upstairs. She had no children, no social standing. She went insane. And in her imagination, she divorced her husband and resumed her maiden name. She now believes she's married to an English aristocracy and she insists on being called Lady Smith. And as for children, she imagines now that she has had a new child every night. Each time I call on her, she says, Doctor, I had a baby last night. Life once wrecked all her dream ships on the sharp rocks of reality. But in the sunny fantasy isles of her insanity, all her barkentines race into port with canvas billowing and winds singing through the masts. Sorry. Tragic? Oh, I don't know, her physician said to me. If I could stretch out my hand and restore her sanity, I wouldn't do it. She's much happier as she is. If some people are so hungry for a feeling of importance that they actually go insane to get it, imagine what miracle you and I can achieve by giving people honest appreciation this side of insanity. One of the first people in American business to be paid a salary of over $1 million a year when there was no income tax and a person earning $50 a week was considered well off was Charles Schwab, who had been picked by Andrew Carnegie to become the first president of the newly formed United States Steel Company in 1921, when he was only 13 years old. Schwab later left US Steel to take over then troubled Bethlehem Steel Company and he rebuilt it into one of the most profitable companies in America. Sorry. Why did Andrew Carnegie pay $1 million a year or more than $3,000 a day to Charles Schwab. Why? Because Schwab was a genius? No, because he knew more about the manufacture of steel than other people? Nonsense. Charles Schwab told me himself that he had many men working for him who knew more about the manufacture of steel than he did. Schwab says that he was paid this salary largely because of his ability to deal with people. I asked him how he did it. Here's his secret, set down in his own words. Words that ought to be cast in eternal bronze and hung in every home and school, every shop and office in the land. Words that children ought to memorize instead of wasting the time memorizing the conjugation of Latin verbs or the amount of annual rainfall in Brazil. Words that will all but transform your life and mind if we only live them. I consider my ability to arouse enthusiasm among my people, said Schwab, the greatest asset I possess, and the way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement. There is nothing else that so kills the ambitions of a person as criticisms from superiors. I never criticize anyone. I believe in giving a person incentive to work. So I am anxious to praise but loath to find fault. If I like anything, I am hearty in my approbation, and lavish in my praise. That is what Schwab did. But what do average people do? The exact opposite. If they don't like a thing, they bawl out their subordinates. If they do like it, they say nothing. As the old couplet says, once I did bad, and that I heard ever. Twice I did good, but that I heard never. In my wide association in life, meeting with many and great people in various parts of the world, Schwab declared, I have yet to find the person, however, great or exalted in his station, who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than he would ever do under a spirit of criticism. That, he said, frankly, was one of the outstanding reasons for phenomenal success of Andrew Carnegie. Carnegie praised his associates, publicly as well as privately. Carnegie wanted to praise his assistants even on his tombstone. He wrote an epitaph for himself, which read, Here lies one who knew how to get around him men who were cleverer than himself. I'm sorry, 1 minute.
No, I'll do it. I'll do it. Don't worry, Drishti. I'll do it. Sorry. Sincere appreciation was one of the secrets of the first John D. Rockefeller's success in handling men. For example, when one of his partners, Edward D. Bedford, lost $1 million for the firm by a bad buy in South America, John D. might have criticized, but he knew Bedford had done his best, and the incident was closed. So Rockefeller found something to praise. He congratulated Bedford because he had been able to save 60% of the money he had invested. That splendid, said Rockefeller. We don't always do as well as that upstairs. I have among my clippings a story that I know never happened, but it illustrates a truth, so I'll repeat it. According to this silly story, a farm woman at the end of a heavy day's work set before her menfolk a heaping pile of hay. And then, when they indignantly demanded whether she had gone crazy, she replied, Why? How did I know you'd notice? I've been cooking for you men for the last 20 years, and in all the time I ain't heard no word to let me know You wasn't just eating hay. When a study was made a few years ago on runaway wives, what do you think was discovered to be the main reason wives ran away? It was lack of appreciation. And I'd bet that a similar study made of runaway husbands would come out the same way. We often take our spouses so much for granted that we never let them know we appreciate them. A member of one of our classes told of a request made by his wife. She and a group of other women in her church were involved in a self improvement program. She asked her husband to help her by listing 6 things he believed she could do to help her become a better wife. He reported to the class. I was surprised by such a request. Frankly, it would have been easy for me to list 6 things I would like to change about her. My heavens, she could have listed 1,000 things she would have liked to change about me. But I didn't. I said to her, let me think about it and give you an answer in the morning. The next morning, I got up very early, called the florist, and had them send 6 red roses to my wife with a note saying, I can't think of 6 things I would like to change about you. I love you the way you are. When I arrived at home that evening, who do you think greeted me at the door? That's right, my wife. She was almost in tears. Needless to say, I was extremely glad I had not criticized her as she had requested. The following Sunday at church, after she had reported the results of her assignment, several women with whom she had been studying came up to me and said, that was the most considerate thing I have ever heard. It was then I realized the power of appreciation. Okay, now it's 10:38. I think Girish and Chandrasekhar have to leave. So I will read for another 7 minutes till 10:45. Girish and Chandrasekhar, please give me your takeaways before we allow Taranjit, Tanmay, and Harshita to speak. Okay? Please put a thumbs up. Florence Ziegfeld, the most spectacular producer who ever dazzled Broadway, gained his reputation by his subtle ability to glorify the American girl. Time after time, he took drab little creatures that no one ever looked at twice and transformed them on stage into glamorous visions of mystery and seduction. Knowing the value of appreciation and confidence, he made women feel beautiful by the sheer power of his gallantry and consideration. He was practical. He raised the salary of chorus girls from $30 a week to as high as 175. And he was also chivalrous. And on opening night at the Follies, he sent telegrams to the stars in the cast. And he deluged every chorus girl in the show with American Beauty roses. I once succumbed to the fad of fasting and went for 6 days and nights without eating. It wasn't difficult. I was less hungry by the end of sixth day than I was at the end of second. Yet I know, as you know, people who think they had committed a crime if they let their families and or employees go for 6 days without food. But they will let them go for 6 days and 6 weeks and sometimes 60 years without giving them the hearty appreciation that they crave almost as much as they crave food. When Alfred Lunt, one of the great actors of his time, played the leading role in Reunion in Vienna, he said, There is nothing I need so much as nourishment for my self-esteem. We nourish the bodies of our children and friends and employees, but how seldom do we nourish their self-esteem? We provide them with roast beef and potatoes to build energy, but we neglect to give them kind words of appreciation that would sing in their memories for years, like music, like the music of the morning stars. Paul Harvey, in one of his radio broadcasts, the rest of the story, told how showing sincere appreciation can change a person's life. He reported that years ago, a teacher in Detroit, just a moment, please, asked Stevie Morris to help her find a mouse that was lost in the classroom. You see, she appreciated the fact that nature had given Stevie something no one else in the room had. Nature had given Stevie a remarkable pair of ears to compensate for his blind eyes. But this was really the first time Stevie had been shown appreciation for those talented years. Now, years later, he says that this act of appreciation was the beginning of a new life. You see, from that time on, he developed his gift of hearing and went on to become, under the stage name of Stevie Wonder, one of the great pop singers and songwriters of the 70s. Some readers are saying right now as they read these lines, oh, fooey, flattery, bare oil. I've tried that stuff. It doesn't work. Not with intelligent people. Of course, flattery seldom works with discerning people. It is shallow, selfish, and insincere. It ought to fail, and it usually does. True, some people are so hungry, so thirsty for appreciation that they will swallow anything, just as a starving man will eat grass and fish worms. Even Queen Victoria was susceptible to flattery. Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli confessed that he put it on thick in dealing with the Queen. To use his exact words, he said, he spread it on with a trowel. But Disraeli was one of the most polished, deft, and adroit men who had ever ruled the far flung British Empire. He was a genius in his line. What would work for him wouldn't necessarily work for you and me. In the long run, flattery will do you more harm than good. Flattery it is counterfeit, like counterfeit money. It will eventually get you into trouble if you pass it to someone else. Okay, I will stop here. And so, Chandrasekhar, you and Girish go first. And then we will take Taranjeet, Tanmay, and Harshita's view.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, Girish, please tell me.
Um, like compared to yesterday, like today, I felt the class was more effective. The Drishti ma'am, like she spoke well, and I could able to follow uh, and concentrate more compared to yesterday. I
Okay,
think I started observing more carefully now.
okay.
So today's class, I felt good, ma'am.
Good, Girish. Okay. What about the subject that was read? What is your view about it? What did you like about the subject that is read? Do you agree with the writer?
Yes, ma'am. I agree to that.
Okay. Okay. Chandrasekhar, do you have any thing that you like?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. Ma'am, in this chapter, I like this one. The feeling of the importance. how the Rockefeller and Dillinger is given importance between poor and other things. I take care from the in this chapter feeling of the importance.
That's so true, Chandrasekhar. No, how people want to feel importance is what drives them. So, feeling of gratitude was what drove Rockefeller, and
Yes,
feeling
ma'am.
of fear made, feeling of importance by being feared was what drove Dillinger,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
So we
Yeah,
should try to be, as because we are sane people, we should try to find good things that make us feel important.
yes, ma'am. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yes. Thank you. So would you like to go, Taranjit?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
This lesson has many memories, vivid memories, which I can say. I think so, like being a favorite teacher or a favorite principal, I think so it has been to me because I was very I gave a lot of good remarks, or might be I pulled up the children, those who were not, those who felt now, like this word importance did not come to my mind, but I always felt that there is a need of wanting where the child has. And when that appreciation the child doesn't get, so it is that makes them go back and back in their career, in their life. So many things that when they don't feel important. I'll tell you one small example. One teacher and the child always called her that you are a wrong choice. You have taken a wrong choice. You are a wrong choice. You shouldn't be studying. You shouldn't be taking. He had taken special maths, and always he kept on saying. And once I was passing by the class, and I stopped and I asked, what's the problem? He said, Madam, this child is not doing well in math, and I don't know why he has taken special math. So I called the child to my office, and he said, no, ma'am, I was doing very well. Like I asked the other teachers. He said, no, ma'am, till grade 7th, he was doing very well. So what has happened to him now in an 8th? So when I asked the other teachers, then I came to know might be that teacher, the remarks that the teacher was giving was just pulling the child down. And I said, okay, so this child, I will take his class, whatever is the material. You teach me and I'll help him to teach. I'll teach him. And within a week's time that the child really did well, his results changed. And then he said, ma'am, I want you only to take my class. I said, I am not that deaf. I am an English teacher. I am not a math teacher. But I just wanted to see what is the change. So the teacher had to be counseled that she should not pass that remarks. Might be at the back of the mind, they were working on the child and he was not doing well. So I think so the feeling of importance, here what the writer says, yes, I always say the feeling of being wanted, the need of being wanted is very important. But yes, the importance is the right word.
Yes. I mean, he has a way with words, and I appreciate the way he's putting across these things. And, like, especially that father forgets. Oh my God, the first time I read it, I cried.
Yes, I got goosebumps after reading that because my own children, like my son and my daughter, I don't appreciate them very easily. And they always say, you are a very tough nut to crack.
I actually cried when I read that. Yeah. So, Harshita, Tanmay, who's going to go next?
Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Harshita.
The 2 points that I agree with the writer are, firstly, it is criticism from the superiors. I do agree with this because it drags the person who is being criticized down. And second one is appreciation, obviously. Appreciation for a student is the best part to boost them and to move forward in their tasks. And I'm thankful that my mother is always my supporter for appreciating me. Because a,
Wonderful.
because a student who is lacking his self-confidence, there must be someone to appreciate his small things. to bring him out, to bring his confidence out.
That's lovely. Lovely. You know, it is a blessing to have people in your life who appreciate you.
Yes, ma'am.
Seriously,
Yes,
a
ma'am.
blessing. You should thank God
It
for
boosts us too.
Yes, you should thank God for that. Thank your mom also for that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll always be thankful to her.
good. Thank you. Tanmay,
Thank you.
what would you like to say? Tanmay, would you like to say something? We would love to hear what you think. Is there an issue with your net? Drishti, you have read it now. You've heard it a little. So,
Yeah.
what is your view about it?
I like the most, I think the one that stood out to me most was the forgetful father, if I'm not wrong. That really struck out to me. That story was it was beautiful. It was really, really beautiful.
I know it literally, I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah. And it's like something as basic as just appreciating someone can help them so much, can motivate someone so much.
Exactly, exactly. Sandhya, how about you? Okay, looks like Sandhya is
Yeah. No, I've just come. Yeah, I think that same story touched my heart.
seriously, you know?
Really. And of course, appreciation is something which everyone loves to have and which makes them move. I mean, like, any appreciation will really motivate people to do much more than what they can.
Yes, yes. And somebody's belief in you.
Yes, yes.
That I think is what I know. I can say that I'm like Harshita. I have this parents. Even now, my parents feel I can achieve anything in my life. I just set my mind to. And that is such a boost of confidence. Not that I lack confidence, but yeah,
Yeah, it definitely helps. Like,
yes, it does. And I try to take a page from their book and be the same to my boys.
yes.
Tanmay, would you like to say something? Even if it's a single line, we would love to hear from you. Would you like to message your opinion? Okay. Looks like Tanmay has gone to bed. So, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll meet tomorrow.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you so much, Drishti.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much. Good